My name is Dirk Meyer. I'm presenting Egretia Blockchain Lab, a Singapore-based company with a sister company in Beijing, China, a very successful gaming company called Egretia. You want me to speak louder? Okay, I can do that. Shortly before feedback here. Okay, I try louder. We are very proud that Egretia Blockchain Lab has the opportunity to be a silver sponsor here at the event. So thank you very much for that opportunity. I'm almost even prouder to have a very distinguished panel of gaming experts coming from different areas in the industry here on stage. I'm not even going to attempt to introduce them myself. I would stumble and stutter and say all the wrong things. So I would like to ask them to introduce themselves, as brief as possible, but as detailed as needed. Talk about their company and give us an idea what blockchain or tokens brought to their business. And after that, I try to make it interesting for you guys also. I want different areas of gaming. So we will look into the game itself. We will look at play the personas are. We will also look at developers and what blockchain technology brought to the developers. And if we have time, we can do an industry outlook. I'm not sure whether we are prepared for any Q&A, stuff like that. So, but I'm sure we will fill the time anyway. So let's get into this right now. And Lee, if you don't mind, please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Sure.
Let's make the rounds.
Thanks. My name is Lee Jacobson. I'm the CEO of a new company called RobotCache. So I am a longtime video game gamer, going back to the, actually I wrote my first video game when I was 15 on the Atari 400. Props to Fred, who's the CEO of Atari out there somewhere. And back then it was, you sold games in baggies, there was no real industry. Thank God it actually became an industry. I was going to seriously disappoint my parents in every way possible. After that I went on to, some of you guys may know who are a little older, a company called Virgin Entertainment back in the 90s. And then for 13 years, I ran Midway Games, business development, global developer relations, and then was lucky enough 30 years later to go to Atari and work with Fred and everybody to run publishing and licensing and biz dev and digital distribution, which is what prompted us. So RobotCache is the first ever digital distribution of video games using the blockchain. And we're really excited about it. When we launch later this year in Q3, gamers will be able to download AAA games, they'll be able to download great indie games. It's a fully curated site. And we're even going to have blockchain-specific games on the site as well. But the big thing is, we're going to give most of the money back to content creators. And for the first time ever, I think for any digital piece of content, when you're done playing the game, you'll be able to sell it to another gamer. So it's I believe, the first time in history where you'll be able to actually sell a digital product. And so we think that sets the tone for a lot of other Pandora's box being opened over the years, and so that's what RobotCache is all about.
Thank you.
Hello, so my name is Jonathan Swerdlow. I'm with Game Protocol. I've been involved in the gaming industry for the last 7 years. For the past 4 years, I've been running the biggest online backgammon operation in the world. Our team is based in Tel Aviv. And we are working on Game Protocol, which is an ecosystem for game developers and for players. What we are trying to do is basically overcome some challenges that we faced as a game developer. And we think that blockchain is providing the right answer to most of those challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we are facing in the gaming industry, especially for independent game developers, is raising money. If you look today at game developers who are trying to raise money, usually when they approach VCs, angel investors, or investment bankers, they are having a hard time raising money for their games. Just because VCs and angel and all those professional financial services don't know how to evaluate the potential of a game, the stickiness of a game, how good the story of the game is. So what we created is a platform which is similar to a crowdsourcing platform, because we know that the community, they actually love to sponsor and to finance games just because they want to see it happen and because they want to play it. So we built this platform where people can, game developers can come to our platform, fill up a form, and issue a token for their game. Once they finished raising money and they issued the token for their game, they can publish their game in our gaming store, which is a distribution platform, which is connected with a credit card payment processing, so the user doesn't have to feel that he's dealing with cryptocurrencies and blockchain transaction. Everything is done behind the scenes. We have a couple of algorithms who are making sure that we always have enough liquidity on our network. So basically we think that that's the right answer to build up a complete economy for game developers and for game players alike.
Thank you, Jonathan. Dave?
Good morning. My name is Dave Anthony. I may well be the luckiest person in the room because I was born in Liverpool, England, which is not exactly the best place of opportunity to grow up in unless you're a footballer or you can sing like the Beatles. And I could do neither. But somehow I ended up in Los Angeles creating a bunch of Call of Duty video games. Most recently, I directed Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2. At that point, after working for 10 years relentlessly, I realized I was actually going insane, so I decided to stop. And that's where I'm at right now. But I was very fortunate to watch Call of Duty grow from something that, frankly, nobody had ever heard of to be this sort of really strange phenomenon with a really incredible community of people based around it and fans of the game. So I'm very, very humbled to have been part of that, and it's been amazing.
Glad to have you here, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Malcolm CasSelle, serial entrepreneur, so built half a dozen companies from scratch, so love the idea to hopefully taking it public or selling it to a much larger company. So done that a bunch of times. The project I've been involved with for about a year or so is a company called Opskins and Wax. Opskins is the most successful marketplace in the world for trading skins. For those of you who are familiar and play games, skins, or for those of you who aren't, skins item that change the look of either the maybe it's a weapon or some item in the game or your avatar. And so if you've ever used Snapchat and you've seen a filter, that's essentially a skin because it changes the look of something. It doesn't change the function. And so we have a marketplace, we do hundreds a year, and we recognized last year that this decentralized movement was really reaching a critical mass, that we could move it completely to a peer-to-peer platform. I think there's a bunch of people here who've participated in Wax and been great supporters. Mental vision is that we empower the people in them to benefit directly from those transactions. So if you're a streamer, because you love playing a game, you really have to live on advertising and sponsorship dollars, which is another basically. And what we're basically enabling those players to do is to have a whole marketplace in a box, which means that very simply they can have an item and they can say, hey, you see this item I'm playing with? It right down below, or it's on auction in 10 minutes. And so that means that now people who watch the games can actually buy those items or sell items that they're using, and then that gives an income back to the streamer. I feel that like this sort of empowerment of the game ecosystem, something that started that wasn't an industry, when I played Atari, when I was a kid, and it wasn't an industry. Now it's an industry, and there's about 2.2 billion gamers in the world on mobile, console, and PC. But this allows the system to really make a living, and that's our vision. So,
great, thank you very much. Okay, I'm getting up because this podium is in the way. As I said before, let's talk a little bit about some specific areas that I think are of interest to all of us and especially to the audience. So, first topic I would like to have your opinion on is the game itself. If we look at, let's call it the traditional games and some of its shortcomings. And having lived in China for 4 years and having worked there, I'm aware of some of what is perceived as shortcomings. There are godlike administrators who can do everything what they want in the game, or there can be artificial inflation of assets that are not fairly distributed, and there is an inflation there. So there are certain shortcomings in traditional games, and I guess all of us believe that blockchain technology can get rid of these disadvantages and create a different playing environment for the player. So where do you think the biggest value in terms of the game itself? Before we go into player personas and development questions, where does the game itself change most dramatically, most drastically? Who wants to take it?
Well, I would say...
And by the way, let's not keep an order here. Let's just chime in, and everybody who has an opinion of these people up here, not down there, can chime in.
Sure. I mean, video games have changed a great deal since their inception, 30-something years ago. As Lee here knows all about being involved directly with Atari and eventually running it. What gamers tend to do when they get obsessed with video games, they just spend hours and hours and hours of time investment playing these games. What do they get back from that? They get fun, they have fun playing the games. But now with the advent of blockchain and a platform like Malcolm's Wax platform, the players can actually monetize their time investment. So they play the game, they can earn things within the game, even whether they earn things from playing the game over a period of time or actually buying them. For the first time now with blockchain, they can actually then trade these items. And it's really interesting because I speak to people all over the world about video games and this and that, and there's actually a lot of people that don't even realize that this is possible right now. And that still surprises me because it's such an amazing thing. Because people can actually earn lots of money by doing this.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. We're coming at it a little bit from a different side in that we're a destination for AAA games from publishers. So you can imagine they have a different perspective of what they want to do to protect their game, protect their rights. So for us, blockchain became a way to not only prove ownership, which was really important, but enable to resell. People say, well, why can't you make the games free? Well, you can't have the games free and have ownership to resell. I mean, you can't have it both ways, right? So, but what we're seeing is, to your point about monetizing the time invested in games, we've actually had several big publishers say, hey, and this is great for them, is if a gamer gets to level 50, can I take that save game data when I sell the game and give that content along with it, just like you can kind of, be a whale in a mobile game? Can I sell that? And that was really interesting to us because now publishers and gamers can monetize in a way that they never could before using the blockchain. And that's just really, really powerful. If you think about it, from a gamer side, getting money back, 25% off $100 that they sell the game for, and the publisher getting 70, 95% back of that, that's where I think the real power for us sort of was the aha moment,
Well, there's another model that we've innovated using blockchain, which is the ability to rent your skin, which never existed before. You could also use them as collateral for a loan, right? Eventually you'll be able to have a credit card that's linked to your account that has, or a debit card linked to your account that has skins in it, and you'd be able to go spend money based upon the balance of virtual items in your account, denominated in, Wax or some other crypto. So, I mean, the models are evolving faster than we've ever imagined. And the idea that you could take a virtual item and rent it out to people is sort of mind-boggling to think about, hey, I can earn interest on my, that used to be, one, I couldn't monetize at all. I couldn't even give it to someone or trade it. So I think one of the things we're seeing is blockchain is sort of forcing this idea of ownership, right? The idea that the virtual item that you've earned is actually never really yours because the publisher controls that ecosystem. And when things are moving to this new standard of ERC 721, and I don't know if that's the end game, I doubt very heavily that it is, but it is the new standard used on Ethereum for one-of-a-kind items. It inherently gives you, as the gamer or the publisher, this ownership that can be transferred. And that is an innovation, is really a wave. I talk to indie developers every single day who are innovating with that assumption, which was never an assumption. A year ago, ERC 721 is basically, since October, November last year, CryptoKitties was the first, I mean, it's hard to call it a game because the mechanic is really just a breeding mechanic between, I think really great games are coming. They're in development, which have mechanics that Dave could talk about and Lee can. We haven't seen, I think, the most awesome games yet. But this assumption that ownership is transferable and that it's fungible, you can do things with it, that is I think, a game changer, no pun intended.
For us, our focus is, we're focusing on other aspects of the blockchain that they can provide to games. For example, one of them is like random number generation. Lots of games, you don't know if they are legitimate or not legitimate, especially when you are dealing like in a real money environment where people are gambling or betting money once again the other. It can be in esports competition, it can be in poker games, any types of game like that. What we are doing, we are basically using the blockchain to generate seeds, and then we are publishing those seeds and the algorithm that is used to generate a random number to the blockchain. So basically with the blockchain now, not only we can guarantee the fairness of a game, we can also make it public, make the algorithm public and show to the people, okay, the game is fair, and every dice that you are throwing or every item that is generated in the game, which is based on some randomness, is published on the blockchain. So I think that's another interesting use case that blockchain is providing today to the gaming industry. Yeah, and there are many other things that people can use the blockchain for in game. What we are trying to do is basically we are building lots of different tools and we are making them public and open source. They are available on our platform, and any developer can use them in order like to integrate a wallet or a crypto economy in this game, or like to integrate some fairness element. There are lots of different aspects that the blockchain is currently bringing to the gaming industry.
So we talked a lot about assets and the mind-boggling ways we envision them to be used going forward. What about, to bring another keyword in, what about smart contracts? Is that too far-fetched? Is it too, it's too early for that, maybe,
so
I don't know.
The random number generator I was mentioning is actually a smart contract. Anything that is built on the Ethereum blockchain, which is an application right now, we can call it a smart contract. There are more advanced types of smart contracts. What we are doing, for example, we are building a very complex economy and we have multiple smart contracts involved. But we can definitely start putting some smart contracts into games.
And that's why I brought it up. I wanted to build on what you were saying, but also hear from the others.
Yeah, and for us, I got to tell you, it's essential to our entire business. I mean, we're going to have games, we have contracts with 16 major publishers around the world, and I can guarantee you one thing: they're going to make sure smart contracts work in a number of ways, or else it's on us, right? I mean, that's real money. I mean, we're a cash business. There's tokens around the actual incentivization and then selling of the game. And so if we don't have those smart contracts, I mean, frankly, that's the reason why we got all the rights as the first company to do that from these big publishers, because they trusted that the immutable blockchain of itself is going to at least provide ownership, right? I mean, there'll always be hackers. There'll always be people trying to infiltrate and do things illegally, but it was the smart contract element that we think is going to evolve over time, is the reason why we're here today, is because they believe in where that's going. And yes, I know it takes time to clear transactions. It also takes a lot of time to download a 50-gigabyte game. So, certainly longer than it takes to clear a transaction on the Ethereum network right now. But I think that it's the idea, and I think Malcolm said it before, you couldn't even do this. I mean, I got buddies at Sony and at Amazon and at EA and Activision. They talked about doing this 8-10 years ago. Wouldn't it be great? But imagine writing 1 million sub-licenses on paper around the world. It just never could have happened. Impossible from a business perspective, from a management perspective, up until even the latter part of last year. So smart contracts, we believe, are just huge in content licensing rights.
Are we ready from a technology perspective, as in transactions per second, or? What does it need to take?
The answer is no.
Right, good answer.
But yeah, the answer is no. We haven't been ready, but like we do more transactions than like the top 10 blockchains all put together. But the point is, per second. But the point is that we are on the cusp of that capacity. In other words, test nets are now being released that are feasible, and I think by the end of the year. We'll see a couple of ones that are out there that are hitting these capacities, and by this time next year, there'll be a lot of choices. So the time we are literally at that moment. I think of it as the singularity for item trading. It's kind of like
I like
when the machine is alive. So, but smart contracts, are really not a new concept in that. All they are is basically saying, hey, here's a set of instructions. I think the innovation here is that they're autonomous and they're distributed, and we're heading towards a world where I think we will see a game like in Ready Player One, but rather than being controlled by Halliday and one guy, it's literally controlled by the ecosystem. Right, and so like there's no CEO of Bitcoin, it is completely decentralized, and so we will see, I think, a game environment that is literally run by the crowd, and people vote on what innovations they want to see, and the token environment is completely held by the users, and the big innovation there is really the ability to monetize the power of the crowd to then fuel what could be next. So it's like, this idea of open source plus crowdsource plus a smart contract and a token equals, big question mark, and I think that's the future that we're headed towards.
Excellent. I like that a lot. Thank you. Good. So let's talk about game players a little bit, and let's make an artificial separation between the traditional player and the blockchain game player. Any challenges from your experience to move traditional players, traditional gamers into the blockchain world? All what we are hearing about assets, it seems like a pretty organic evolution, right? It makes it easier, it should make it smoother, there are more options, you can start selling, trading assets and props and whatever is out there. And at the same time, also asking the question, we have a lot of blockchain, let's call them blockchain nerds, who may have a fable for gaming, right? It would also be interesting to bring them into your gaming community so that they can enrich that community, maybe with a little bit more blockchain technology specific accents. Anything you can share there? Is that a challenge, or is that a no-brainer once we move forward?
I think right now the blockchain user experience is one of the worst user experience we have in the world. Let's be honest, like going to Kraken or Coinbase, buying some Bitcoin, sending it to an address with many numbers, you never know where it's gonna go, you use maybe MetaMask, maybe another wallet. Everything is kind of complex, and I think the everyday user who is a gamer won't be able to do all those steps in order to enjoy blockchain-based games. So I think the answer to that is really user experience, and that's what we are focusing on. We are trying to reproduce the user experience that the gamers are already having in their normal everyday games that they are playing when they are using, for example, their credit card in one of the big stores, or those kind of transactions that they are used to do, that they know are secured, that they have been doing for years now. We are trying to bring that to the blockchain. So as I said earlier, for us, the blockchain is really used behind the scenes and never facing the users. The users shouldn't face the blockchain. The users shouldn't be dealing with a private key and with too much tokenization. I think for the user it should be as easy as possible, at least at this stage. Maybe in the next 10 years the public and the audience will be more mature and will be more used to blockchain and private key and those kind of things, and will be able to take it one step further. But we are really trying to take it one step at a time. Our goal, our mission is basically to bring as many users to to blockchain-based games without them even knowing that they are entering blockchain-based games. So for us, we see blockchain as a tool for fundraising, a tool for development, but we don't see it as a practical currency for the everyday user and everyday gamer at this stage.
So that would be a very user persona focused approach.
Exactly.
You add a feature to your game, and I'm speaking as a software developer here coming from Adobe. You would add a feature to your game, you would expose it to users, you would measure the reaction. Are we putting money on the table for that? If they say yes, then you implement it and you take it step by step in a very agile fashion to always be very close to what the market requests from you.
Exactly.
Excellent. Good. Any other opinions?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan's absolutely right. I mean, look, let's face it, gamers, they just want to play games. They don't want to even hear the word blockchain. They don't know what it is. They don't understand it. They just want to spend their time playing the game. So I think blockchain almost has a PR problem in that when people hear about it, they think, they hear all, oh my God, I heard that story of how there was a Bitcoin heist or this and that. And people are just kind of scared of it. But when they really understand, you know, what's out there right now, you know, it's like with the Wax platform, right? You guys use KYC and AML, you know, the security side of things is sort of rock solid. And there is actually in reality nothing more secure than the blockchain. And I think when people start realizing that, you know, things may change a little bit. I would also say, I think, you know, mass adoption of this idea will also come with when we get the first real killer game that is designed and built around maximizing this system. And I think it might be coming very, very soon. I mean, if you look at what's happened, you know, even over the last year with a game like Fortnite, you can see how one game can come along and it can completely disrupt the business model of gaming. And I think we're going to see exactly the same thing happen with blockchain, and I think it's coming pretty soon.
So last week, there was a game released in China, which was, I think it's called Battle the Monsters, Catch the Monsters. That was the rough translation. And it was Pokemon Go meets CryptoKitties. So it was that excitement of like AR where you could go out and in the real world battle monsters, but then you could collect them and trade them. And I'm sad that Tencent decided to run it on a private blockchain, but I understand that's China. That's the way things run there. But I'm almost certain that if that thing catches fire, like Fortnite, which has had like N copycats, some of which are Chinese actually, which are in court right now. But there will be many copycats which will be open. And we will see 3 months from now, we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, that was the lightning in the bottle. But I think you're right, it's coming, and we're going to see it, and it's going to happen very quickly.
Yeah, and you know, I saw, I think, Wax, you guys did a Venn diagram crossover, I remember reading, like last month, where it showed the crypto enthusiasts and how they overlap from the gaming community. And it was a huge overlap, 70, 80% or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, in fact, if you do the overlap of a millennial and a gamer, like the incidence of use of cryptocurrency or owning a cryptocurrency was like the majority. It was like nuts. So there is a core audience of people who are like already sold on it. But I think Dave makes a real point that nobody cares about blockchain. They care about gameplay. And they care about, oh, wait, my item is worth something. I can trade it. I can make money off of it. Or I can trade it into the next game that I want to play. That's the thing they come for and what they stay for. The fact that we're all sitting around here talking about blockchain is sort of like the people who were sitting around talking about Unity back in the day, right? The gamers are like, Unity, Unreal, whatever. Like, does it look good? Does it sound good? Is the gameplay awesome? That's what got them to buy and kept them coming back.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, and you both said it, Jonathan, you mentioned it, and as well as gamers just want to play games. And I think we're having this conversation about, blockchain because it's the buzzword of the day, the week, the month, the year, whatever goes on. But, speaking as probably the oldest guy on the panel here, the old man,
Maybe
I can
not.
tell you that it goes back ever since, I was a kid. And it's fundamental shifts in tectonic new technologies that drive whatever we all in the industry think are important. Gamers just want to play games. And if you bring value and a good user experience, honestly, I think gamers are more loyal to games than they are any sort of brands now, ever have been. And, I think you guys said it right. Something's going to come along. There'll be a couple of billion knockoffs, I'm sure, but that's going to really move us to the next level. And then it'll be 5 years from now, people say, well, blockchain games, they're just going to be games. I mean, we're going to have a site on RobotCache. It's going to have nothing but, India section and the AAA section, but there's be a whole blockchain game section. But I hope in the future that doesn't have to be that way anymore.
Yeah, they'll just be games. I don't know what you would call it, but it'll be, whatever.
Right, they're games.
Maybe those games will just go into their other categories. They'll go into MMO, they'll go into first-person
Right,
shooters.
free to play,
They'll go into
various
strategy games. Back where all the other ones are. It's just that when somebody's looking, they're like, oh, this is a title where I can keep my items and use my items. This is a title where I could resell a used game or not resell a used game. This is one that was crowdfunded, and I have a piece of because I participated early. Like it'll be divided by function rather than by technology.
One of the great things as well about tokens and gaming is the fact that it's not very often in life you get a genuine win-win. But what happens with this is the players win because they can earn money by playing the game. But guess what? Statistically, most of the money that the players earn goes right back into the game. So the players win and the developers win. So everybody's happy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, this is the argument we have with item trading. The publishers say, why do we want secondary market? That just means they'll spend the money there rather than in the primary market. And I say, well, you forget that one, the secondary market increases the value of the primary market, right? You'll spend more on something you can resell. And number two, when you make that money, most of it goes back into play the game, right? So it's like you've created this huge source of revenue to go back because you have players who only have a limited amount of money. But if you gave them more money and they love your game, they're going to spend it on the game.
Yeah, we think it totally opens up a whole new ecosystem that unlocks value that you couldn't do before.
Taking the keyword ecosystem and also what Dave just brought up, you brought developers up, right? So I think that's an area that we haven't talked about. The future is bright. This becomes very clear. We are in an infancy of something that is also very clear. Now, an integral part of this thing overall to be successful is having developers motivated to do their work using these new approaches. They have to change their mindset. I'm thinking of SDKs, open sourcing, APIs, to enable folks that are outside the usual prison of a company, say, that are out there. We want to enable them to do whatever it is they want to do. So how can we entice them? What's the challenge there?
So for me, I think it starts with funding. There are lots of really talented game developers out there. There are lots of really talented game designers out there. And most of them, they either go and work for a big studio or they decide to go to the indie route. When they decide to go and be an indie, it's really hard for them to get the funding that they need in order to get the project going. So that's an area where we wanted to focus and provide them with a solution. We try to do, just like we're doing with users, we try to do the user experience as simple as possible. We did exactly the same for developers. We try to do the developer experience as simple as possible. So for example, when a developer comes on our platform and he issues a token, it doesn't need to go through auditing, it doesn't need to go through most of the legal requirement that you are required to do today as a token issuer. We take care of all this part for him. You just need to focus on what he does the best, which is telling the story of the game, which is explaining what he's going to develop, which is presenting the team. And then he can get things going and start raising money from the public by tokenizing his game. And for us, this is the keystone of this entire ecosystem. We want to see lots of successful indie games being developed on our platform. We want lots of gaming companies, might be bigger companies. We can imagine having a AAA game coming from our platform in the future. And we hope one of them is going to succeed at raising enough funding to do a project which is going to be a game changer for the industry.
Let me quickly chime in here because I have to bring in a pitch for Egretia, which is our partner company in Beijing. They are going the same direction. They have a portfolio of 14 tools for asset trading, for game development, and other things that they offer as a package to developers. They can download, they can start developing their game, they can focus on different functionalities. 250,000 developers, I think that's a good number. And hitting 1 billion end devices is also a good number for Egretia in Beijing. But I just wanted to state it because I think this is the right strategy. But
yeah, no, I just got one thing to say about that. I mean, I think it's for developers. The reason, for I think other people will do this is as decentralization takes hold with things like even file distribution, right? Filecoin, IPFS, and not having to stream content out on big servers. I mean, all this kind of stuff is really disrupting everything. And that's what really allowed us to take a 5% distribution fee instead of 30%. Mm-hmm. And we've gone back to the publishers, and I won't tell you who those guys are, but there's a lot of sort of desire to say, look, if the content creators create games, they should get most of it back because it's only going to fuel the ecosystem more. And frankly, you don't need 30%, as proved by Humble Bundle and guys that you have to volunteer to even pay them a dime. Some you can get for free, right? So we know that it can be done. There's other ways to generate revenue streams, but developers have really, I guess, and indies and publishers like the idea of keeping most of what they have. And frankly, that's going to go back into better games. It's going to go back into, a better ecosystem. And frankly, I think that the time is just right to disrupt that entire business model. People say, well, what if Steam drops their 30% to 5% because you guys are in there? Then you know what? That's awesome. Because that means, billions of dollars goes back in the hands of the creators. It was their money to begin with. And I'll just drop the mic and retire.
That's right.
Done.